So let's transition into the next piece that kind of just rewinds the timeline a little bit. But before Eppler's departure, the New York Post dropped a story on Wednesday regarding the former GM and the Mets' former manager, Buck Showalter. During the 2023 season, Eppler and Showalter reportedly butted heads regarding the playing time of the infamous Daniel Vogelbach. As the 30-year-old lefty bat continued to struggle into the season, Showalter apparently was faced with a lot of resistance from Billy Eppler when trying to employ other options other than Vogelbach at DH against right-handed pitching. With his limited mobility and lack of power production, it was assumed by many sources at the time that Vogelbach would be dealt at the trade deadline, but that obviously did not happen, and Buck reportedly started openly questioning why Vogelbach was still in Queens after the Mets deadline sale. Not only was he still on the team, but a source indicated that he was told by Eppler to keep him in the starting lineup. As we all know, before the Mets' last game of 2023, Showalter announced that he will not be returning for the 2024 season in the Mets organization. In his pregame presser, Showalter indicated that Eppler gave him the option of stepping down or he would be fired nonetheless, acknowledging that the team is going in a different direction for the managerial position.
This is literally the definition of most GMs being and never admitting that they're wrong. The GM always is going to be, if they go out and make a trade, they're going to give those guys the opportunity first because you know what? They gave up assets, just depending on what it is. This guy gave up 4 assets for us. One, cost controllable middle reliever, high leverage arm, which what do the Mets need right now? Oh yeah, young, controllable, middle relieving, high leverage arms. They dump one of them for a fat Jabba the Hutt that can't move, can't hit, can't walk, he barely can see. As Frank about Sports said last week, just a waste of fat. He doesn't do anything. But again, the GM has to always be right and say, I'm gonna give him every opportunity to make me look good. And that's what Billy Eppler was doing. Instead of doing what's for the benefit of the team, his ego got in the way and tried to make this move work out, which it clearly didn't. Buck giving in, again, for that old school tough guy that Buck Showalter's supposed to be, that, he's supposed to not give up shit. And I, respect a little bit that fact that he didn't want to play that. He wanted to play either Ventos or DJ Stewart, whoever it would have been, but not playing Daniel Vogelbach. You got to give him a little bit of credit, more than maybe we gave him before, because every time we saw the lineup card, we're like, what the hell's Buck doing? But the fact now it's not on Buck. Would I still brought him back? No. So am I still happy he's kind of gone? Yeah, but again, a little bit of heat now is off Buck from the fans, I would expect, especially off me. Again, I still can't talk about that bullpen decision and bullpen management, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But again, it's just kind of the GM doing everything in his power to make himself look good instead of putting the team first.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things for me is that, while we were doing our podcast during the season and the Mets were really struggling, having an awful year, big disappointment, and, we asked the question, who deserves the blame? And there were a few different avenues that you could go. You could go owner, GM, manager, players. I'll tell you what, after hearing this story, some of the blame, like Andrew said, comes off of Buck and it goes to Billy Eppler. And what I really hate is the stubbornness and, just not admitting that you were wrong. So, like we said, you already made the bad move, getting rid of Colin Holderman for Daniel Vogelbach. And then he comes into the season not playing well. And, we kept saying, and that's why we talked about him so much, Carson. And you're saying it feels like we talk about Vogelbach all the time. And that's why, because we're like, he's been so bad. How could he possibly still be in the lineup? Because it just didn't make any sense because there were better options. And that's what kept driving us crazy. Like, how is Buck still playing? How is Buck still playing him? And it's because Eppler told him to. And that's really frustrating because it's like you don't let the manager do his job. So Billy Eppler, I mean, he just kept letting like one wrong become worse and worse. And you have to think that, to me, Daniel Vogelbach is such a minor piece of the team to me, because you think of what he's getting paid. The fact that Eppler is telling Buck what to do with Vogelbach, he can't be the only player that Eppler was doing that with. It makes me believe that there were other things that were wrong with this team that Eppler was saying, no, Buck, you have to do this, you have to do that. So what doesn't make sense to me is that Eppler assembles this team, tells Buck who to play, the team plays like crap, and Eppler says, I'm going to fire you. That doesn't make sense. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, he's blaming other people for his mistakes. I don't get that. And it's like we said 100 times. What has Eppler done that deserved this? And keep in mind, I'm not the biggest fan of Buck Showalter. I know you guys aren't the biggest fan of Buck Showalter, but I have more respect for Buck Showalter than I have for Billy Eppler. I would let Buck Showalter have more input on who is playing and not playing and all this other stuff than I would with Billy Eppler. That's what I don't understand. How did Billy Eppler get so much power? What did he do that makes it like he has the say? Like, he is not that kind of GM that should be telling what the manager could do. He's just not that guy to me. So I really just don't understand it. And then that's why it's like, okay, well, are they going to hire another person under Stearns? And if that's the case, and you have to hire another manager, and then once again, you ask the question, who's in charge here? Is it Stearns? Is it the guy Stearns hires? Is it the manager? Like, there's just so many different avenues that you can go with this that it just makes like a lot of the puzzling decisions that we talked about, a lot of the questionable things that were happening, it makes more sense now because it's Billy Eppler telling Buck Showalter what to do. And it's like the fact that he just won't be like, you know what? I made a mistake. Let me move on. Like, what I don't get is that you accepted the mistakes with Verlander and Scherzer trading away. Be like, okay, those were bad signings. Let me trade those away and get some good young pieces. But you won't do the same for Vogelbach? Like, I guess because the fans, I guess, were so against Daniel Vogelbach and so harsh on him, led by myself. I'll admit that, that we were so hard that Eppler is so determined to try to prove us wrong that he had made the right decision. Like, I mean, how could you be that spiteful, being like, oh, I'm going to prove these people wrong. Watch, Daniel Vogelbach's going to play well. Like, why would you ride or die with that guy? I mean, it's like I've been telling you, he's been bounced from team to team for a reason. He's not that good. He's deceiving. He looks like he should be good, but he's not. A big guy like that should have big power. He does not. He is a waste of fat. He is a tease. He is a trick. So the fact that Eppler was like, I got to make sure this is my ride or die. Why? I just don't understand the just fascination with it and for having to lead to this. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me that you're like, you know what? Like, oh, this DH who absolutely sucks. This is the guy that I really got to make sure the manager always plays. It just doesn't make any sense because if Epler's trying to save his job, how about winning? That cures all. But, I mean, Daniel Vogelbach could be even worse than he is now. But if you're winning, I really don't care. So it's like, let DJ Stewart play. If you want to keep your job, you want people to not hate you, I mean, admit when you're wrong. I gave him credit for getting rid of Scherzer and Verlander. But then when you do crap like this, I'm like, I mean, well, what are we doing here? So Eppler, again, he just continues to just be very baffling. How he got the job in the first place is still a mystery to me because who would want this guy? Who in their right mind would want to hire Billy Eppler after all the just absolute destruction he causes everywhere he goes? The Angels are terrible. The Mets are terrible. He misuses the IL. He tells the manager what to do and doesn't even tell him to do the right thing. He makes bad trades. I mean, he signs 40-year-old players. Like, why would you even want Eppler at this point? This guy he just gets worse and worse by the day.
Buck deserves somewhat of, the heat taken off of him. But, you also look at how the roster was constructed and guys who should be on this roster and guys who shouldn't be. I mean, Daniel Vogelbach, we all knew should not have been on this team all season. We all knew that he should have been DFA'd at some point. Now, the possible replacements, the other options that Buck Showalter was reportedly talking about, according to this source, which may be Buck Showalter, but let's not forget, I mean, we all know the connection he has to DJ Stewart. He was one of the top advocates for when he was drafted by the Orioles back in 2015, 2016. And DJ Stewart comes in here and he hits pretty well doing the role of what Daniel Vogelbach was supposed to do. And you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe Buck is a little bit better of a general manager than Billy Eppler here. Like, you look at some of these scenarios where maybe Buck had the right idea and Billy Eppler did not. But then there was also some other connections that he had, like Tommy Hunter and some other pieces on this roster where you knew that there were probably some of Buck's guys, but you also see a lot of Billy Eppler's guys being put in here. And to be honest, there was just no reason for Daniel Vogelbach to be here after the trade deadline. I mean, it just seems like, Billy Eppler, he tried to force in Vogelbach here like it's just some kind of narrative of his. Like he's some kind of Twitter guy on Twitter trying to push some like meaningless MLB narrative. You can go and troll all you want on Twitter, but if the team's not winning, who the fuck cares? Like nobody goddamn cares. If the team is the worst team in the business and somebody gets a 3-hit game and, you're happy for once about that, who cares? The team didn't win. The team's not good. It's promising, but who the hell cares? We wanted to see the prospects play. And the fact that we had way too much of Daniel Vogelbach, I mean, I'm just hoping that, we don't see him next year. I mean, we've already talked about how you just can't justify this guy being on the roster next year. But I'm also kind of worried because we all know that David Stearns was somebody who acquired. I'm not surprised. I really am not surprised. It didn't seem like Buck Showalter was involved in a lot of the decisions, especially at the trade deadline. It didn't seem like he knew or was aware of anything that went on before the transactions were announced. And that's kind of the short end of the stick for Buck Showalter. But at the end of the day, I still, I still go with the notion that if you're going to win a World Series, you're not going to win it with Buck Showalter at the helm. You're not going to win it with Billy Eppler. I guess, Billy Eppler just liked Daniel Vogelbach because he just has proved little to nothing in his career, and he can relate to that as a general manager, because I can't really see or justify this guy being on the roster at all. And the fact that he lasted 162 games this year after how frustrating it has been to watch him play is just remarkable, especially with tons of top prospects in the higher levels that were ready to take the next step to the major leagues.